Welcome. Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating moment in financial history, all through the lens of a single document, Berkshire Hathaway's 2010 annual report. Now, this wasn't just any old report. You have to remember, this came out when the world was still just picking up the pieces from the Great Recession. It's an absolute masterclass in investing philosophy. All right, let's get into it. To really get the mindset behind everything that happened this year, you have to start right here, with these words from Warren Buffett himself. He wrote, "Commentators today often talk of great uncertainty. Tomorrow is always uncertain. Don't let that reality spook you." That's the core idea right there. While pretty much everyone else was spooked, Berkshire was getting ready to make a move. And trust me, back in 2010, the world was definitely spooked. The vibe was just pure pessimism. I mean, think about it. The ghost of the 2008 financial crisis was still hanging over every single market conversation. People were seriously worried, talking about a new normal of slow growth and, just like Buffett said, great uncertainty. So in this kind of environment, where fear is just everywhere, what does Berkshire Hathaway do? Well, they make their largest acquisition ever. At a time when most were playing defense, they went on offense. They basically made an all-in bet on America, and it was a move that looked incredibly contrarian at the time. And the highlight, the absolute centerpiece of their entire year, was this: the acquisition of Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF for short. We are talking about one of the biggest railroad systems in all of North America. This wasn't just a big deal, it was a defining one. So just how big are we talking? Well, to buy the rest of the company they didn't already own, Berkshire dropped $22 billion in cash and stock. This wasn't just dipping a toe in the water, this was a full-on cannonball into the deep end. Now, the thinking behind this is what's really brilliant. This wasn't just about buying a bunch of trains and tracks. Buffett himself said it was a fundamental bet on the economic future of the United States. He believed that no matter what, over time, the amount of goods moving across the country was only going to go up, and BNSF would be like a critical artery for all that future business. And you can see the impact almost immediately. The company's regular earning power got a boost of nearly 40% pre-tax right away. It was a totally transformational move that fundamentally changed the size and scale of Berkshire's operations literally overnight. Okay, so they made this huge, bold bet. The big question is, how did it work out? How do we actually grade their performance for that year? Let's take a look at the scorecard. And here is where the story gets really interesting. If you just look at that single year, 2010, Berkshire's book value went up by 13%. Now, that's pretty good. But the S&P 500, when you include dividends, grew by 15.1%. So if you're only looking at that one-year snapshot, they actually underperformed the market. But here's the thing. Berkshire never plays a one-year game. When you zoom out, the picture changes completely. From 1965 all the way through 2010, Berkshire's compounded annual gain was 20.2%. That's more than double the S&P 500's 9.4%. Suddenly, that one little year of underperformance just looks like a tiny blip in this massive, decades-long story of creating value. Buffett himself explains this philosophy perfectly. He says, the pace of the Earth's movement around the sun is not synchronized with the time required for either investment ideas or operating decisions to bear fruit. In other words, you just can't judge a 10-year decision by a one-year calendar. It just doesn't work that way. Now, to make these huge, long-term bets, you need a seriously powerful financial engine. And a massive part of that engine, we could call it their $66 billion secret, is a concept called insurance float. So what in the world is float? It's actually really simple. It's all the money that an insurance company, like Berkshire's own Geico, collects in premiums from you and me before it has to pay out any claims. So for a while, they just get to hold on to all that cash. And just how much of this cash was Berkshire holding in 2010? A truly mind-boggling $66 billion. That is an enormous pool of capital just sitting there, ready to be put to work. Here's the best way to think about it. It's like getting a $66 billion loan from your customers. A loan that, if you're good at the insurance business, costs you absolutely nothing. In fact, by 2010, Berkshire had run its insurance operations at a profit for 8 years straight. That means they were effectively being paid to hold on to this money, which they could then go out and invest for their own profit. This is the financial jet fuel that powers the whole Berkshire empire. So, as we start to wrap up our look at this 2010 report, what's the golden nugget? What's the one big idea we should really take away from all of this? It really boils down to this one simple but incredibly powerful line from the report. Time is the friend of the wonderful business. It doesn't matter if you're buying a railroad, investing in Coca-Cola, or building an insurance company. The strategy is always the same. Find a great business and then just let time and the power of compounding do their magic over many, many years. And that leaves us with one last provocative thought. Back in 2010, Berkshire Hathaway saw widespread pessimism, and they used it as a massive opportunity to buy a critical piece of America's infrastructure. So if we take that lesson to heart, that pessimism creates opportunity, the question for us today is this: what is today's railroad?